Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Love Fruit podcast. And today we have another special guest who's actually a pioneer in the world of raw and living foods, and that's Joyce Oliveto. During her 30-year career as a natural healer, she has empowered thousands of people throughout the world to transform their health with the live food lifestyle. And during the first decade of her life as a raw foodist, Joyce was closely mentored by raw food heroes Dr. Ann Wigmore and Viktoras Kulvinskas. Today, she travels nationally and internationally, helping people transform their lives spiritually, emotionally, and physically through the methods handed down to her by the living food sages. So I'm very pleased to be speaking to Joyce Oliveto. Thank you for joining us, Joyce.
Thank you for having me, Ronnie. I'm really excited. I love sharing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Joyce, what I'd like to know firstly is I'm going to assume that you weren't born and brought up on a live food lifestyle or a raw foods lifestyle. So, what was your upbringing like?
Oh no, I wasn't born in the raw food lifestyle. I was born into a 100% Italian family that ate Italian food. And so, but at 38 years old, excuse me, I was diagnosed with three huge fibroid tumors and a couple of tumors on my ovaries. And I actually had already read Dr. Ann's book, Be Your Own Doctor, and Survival into the 21st Century, Viktoras' book. And a dear friend of mine had given them to me. I was already a vegetarian. And in 1979, I started bleeding heavily and having blood clots. And I had an idea what was going on. But what I went to the gynecologist, an allopathic gynecologist, and he basically said, you're going to have an hysterectomy. And so I remembered the words in the books I read. And now this is 1980, Ronnie. So everybody at that time didn't know, not very many people knew the body could heal itself. And so, and that's our beliefs. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've seen over the years. But I called Dr. Ann on the way home from the doctor's office. I called the Hippocrates Health Institute in Boston. And that was April of 1980. And had a wonderful talk with her. She actually answered the phone back in those days. And then I just made a decision that I was going to go to Hippocrates in Boston. That's the one in Florida that was years later, but that's what I did. And my oldest daughter was graduating from high school that summer. So I waited till August. And of course, my family was concerned that, something bad was going to happen because I wasn't going to go have surgery. But I've always kind of lived outside the box. So in August, I hightailed it to Hippocrates Health Institute. And it was so far in my life, the most profound experience of my life. And that was August of 1980. And I went in, I was very depressed because I was going through a divorce of my choosing. I had 3 teenagers at home. I was having blood clots like 18 days a month. And my life changed. The program was profound. My life changed on every level, and I never looked back. When I left, I felt like I was looking at the world through someone else's eyes, and the experience was every day was better than the next, and it was a learn by doing experience. And the first 3 days were nothing but Rejuvelac, wheatgrass juice. You made all your own juices, you planted all your own foods. It was learn by doing. And there were classes, there was yoga, there was meditation, there was prayer. The teachers were amazing. And I just took it all in. And I think the thing that touched me the most was that because of that level of purification that happens, and your consciousness rises because of how pure your body is. And I started to feel God in my life on a deeper level while I was there. I actually felt that he loved me and accepted me. I never felt that before. The pressure went away because I was in a divorce. and all the tumors dissolved in less than 2 weeks. That's pretty crazy, but I know a lot of people experience that when you're in a controlled environment like Hippocrates Health Institute. So when I came home, I did, well, I learned a lot, because when I came home, I just couldn't stop talking about it. I couldn't. And then I realized during the process that nobody else had experienced what I had experienced. So I needed to be an example. Even my 3 teenagers at home, I was going to come home and empty all my cupboards, and that was going to be it. But I learned that I had to be an example, and I just never looked back. It's my lifestyle. And yes, in the wintertime, I probably do more 80-20 because I live in Michigan. But in the summertime, I'm pretty much 100% and I love it. So I know there's a lot of thoughts and feelings about the raw and living foods lifestyle. And there's a big difference between raw and living. So I do mostly living foods. And I guess that's pretty much it. If you want to go to the next question, I can keep going.
No, I love it when people keep going, but that was a great, I mean, you revealed so much there. And you actually got quite emotional there. I think even when you were talking about Anne Wigmore.
I was so blessed, Ronnie, because we became very close friends, and Dr. Ann became close friends with many people. She mentored many of us and wanted us to just go teach the world one person at a time. And, you know, in the present time, a lot of people in the raw and living foods lifestyle don't even know who Dr. Ann Wigmore is. They don't even know who Viktoras Kulvinskas is. And that's okay. It's a different mindset, but they're doing it. It's a very powerful way to live your life. And I believe that it's important for people to understand that you don't have to do it all the time. Just get back up. And the more you do that, your body cell, your cells change, your thoughts change, your tissues change. Your body actually starts to crave extremely healthy food. And one of the things that happens is, and I try to make sure that when I'm working with my clients, whether it's on the phone or in person, or I'm doing retreats, because we do live food retreats here, just once or twice a year though. I try to make sure that people experience the feeling. And once you experience that feeling, you always want it. That's been my experience in many people that I've spoke to. So even if I do it, a 12-day detox day where I send people home with stuff so they can continue the next day, it's amazing. People begin to feel that shift in consciousness and the clarity of mind and that peace.
Wow.
And so I have seen I know when I left there, the main motivator for me, Ronnie, was that when I came home, I mean, the depression just went away totally. And depression, I mean, having a divorce, going through 3 kids, being with somebody for almost 20 years, it's not easy. And we loved each other, but it had to be. But it went away. I felt like a stronger person, more assured, more confident, more peaceful. So many things come with detoxification and rebuilding your immune system, and living a life of vibrant health is a wonderful feeling. And once you feel it, you seem to always want to be able to be there.
Wow. I was curious about.
I'm sorry, I didn't turn my phone off. Could you ask me that again, please?
No. Yes. So at 38, I think you said you were diagnosed with the fibroids. And
yeah.
Prior to that, you grew up on an Italian style diet, but did you experience good health through your life up to then, or did you have other challenges mostly?
I had very good health, and my father was a gardener, and we always canned and had fresh foods, and the foods that was cooked in a lot of Italian foods are vegetables. Pasta was at least 2 or 3 times a week, but that was like an appetizer before the main meal. But we ate a pretty healthy lifestyle. Once a week we had ice cream, and that's kind of how I was raised. That's just my mom and dad were old country.
When did you become a vegetarian?
I was about I started playing around with vegetarianism I'm sorry, I'm trying to learn to look into the camera. I started playing around with vegetarianism when I was about somewhere in my mid-30s. My sister was a vegetarian, and I started to learn from her. And then a dear, dear friend of mine, I met Kathleen. They were raw fooders. And I got goosebumps just now, but they were raising two kids and doing raw and living foods. And I saw their vibrance. I saw the family, how they all communicated and just the calmness about them. And I started, and then they were moving to California, and Kathleen gave me two books, and she gave me Viktoras's book, Survival into the 21st Century, and Dr. Ann's book, Be Your Own Doctor. And I couldn't put them down. And so when the changes in my body started to happen, there was a lot of stress in my life. And that is actually, from my teaching and my experience, and most of us know that that's the number one imbalance in our bodies and how we're affected by stress. And so when I started to have the problem and the bleeding continued and the blood clots got bigger, that's when I went to the doctor. And the first thing I did when I came back, or on the way home, I called the Hippocrates Health Institute in Boston and was able to talk to Dr. Ann. So yeah, I wasn't sick before that.
So you actually had exposure to raw foods from a couple that you knew?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And do you
That's
know
how it started.
What it must have been quite rare for someone to be doing that back then.
Yep. And they were actually, we're friends for over 50 years now. And she moved back to Michigan. And one day back then we said someday we're going to be sitting in rocking chairs together. Hasn't happened yet, but it's almost there. Anyway, she's back in Michigan. But Kathleen was 10 years younger than me, and kind of more of a hippie lifestyle. And they went, spent time in Ananda and learned all about raw foods. And yeah, that's how they were exposed to raw and living foods.
What was Ananda?
Well, Ananda is gosh, I don't know if I can explain it. Well, they're followers of Satchidananda.
All right, okay.
And there's a retreat in Michigan. Then they moved out to California, but I believe that's where I'm going to have to ask Kathy now what made them start on raw and living foods. That's a good question.
And is she still doing raw foods now?
No, but she eats very healthy.
Brilliant. Okay.
Very.
So back then there was the books that you had access to, and you took it upon yourself to actually call Hippocrates when you had this issue, and you made the decision to go. What was it like back then? What was Hippocrates? Obviously, Hippocrates is still around today, probably different to back then, but what was it like then?
Oh, wow, that's such a great question. Wow. Well, when I went, I think 4 or 5 of the best teachers from around the country were there because they were just finishing a conference, and they all did some of the teaching. But we got up in the morning and very early, and we made our own Rejuvilac, we made our own wheatgrass, we did wheatgrass implants, then went back in the morning and made our own juice. And juice was from all sprouts, buckwheat greens, sunflower greens, alfalfa sprouts, all kinds of different sprouts, and Rejuvilac. I know a lot of people don't use Rejuvilac nowadays because it has to be right.
What is Rejuvilac?
Rejuvilac is a fermented, unbelievable. It's a fermented drink made with different types of sprouted berries, whether wheat berries, rye berry, spelt, and so and you grind it, you sprout them, you soak them overnight, grind them up, and put them through, we put them through the champion juicer or the wheatgrass juicer, put them in the bottom of a gallon jar, 2 cups, fill it with water, and leave it to ferment for about 4 days and then strain it and put it in the refrigerator. And it kind of tastes like champagne. And it's very full of probiotics, but a lot of raw food centers don't use it anymore because you can't really
Is it,
test, I guess you could, if there's bacteria in it. So I don't mind making my own. I love it. But when I as time went by, because when I came home from Boston, I went straight to Hippocrates Institute in Coldwater, which was an hour and a half from me, but it then had to be changed to Creative Health Institute. And so they were just beginning to open, and I became one of the teachers. I had my own business at the time, but I could drive back and forth an hour and a half, and it was my support system. And so we brought the whole program there. Don Hoy opened it up. He used to have a saloon, and he turned it in to a raw food center in Coldwater, Michigan. And so his life was changed dramatically. So he came home and did that. But back to Hippocrates in Boston, you woke up in the morning and you made all your juices, you drank your juices, you did your wheatgrass juice, you did your wheatgrass implant. We had colonics, we had classes, we had meditation. The classes were phenomenal. And I was all I wanted to do was learn everything I could learn. And I just ate it up, and every day became better and better and clearer and clearer. We also went down to the growing room, and we had to soak our seeds for all of our sprouts, for our greens, for our wheatgrass, and plant them. And then it was a learn by doing program. So when the next group came in, theirs were growing already. So we were able by the third day to go and harvest the groups before. And when you cut and harvest your wheatgrass and or your greens immediately, you're not losing the enzyme activity because you cut and them fresh. The molecule within the plant is still good. It's not destroying the enzymes, because when you take a plant and you harvest it, I don't care what fruit and vegetable it is, the enzyme activity in it begins to become lower and lower because it has to feed off of itself, because it doesn't have the root system to feed anymore. So you harvest, you make your stuff, you make your energy soup, or you make your juice, and you're eating it or juicing it right then. And when we were allowed to eat on the fourth day, and that's what I do here, I only can do 4 days once. I can't do 7 days anymore, but it's amazing. My staff is incredible. But what happens is all the enzyme activities there, all the nutrients are there, nothing has been, and the enzymes are in there. Enzymes are so important, Ronnie, and I think you know that. So then when we did start to eat on the third day, we were able to eat all green salads with all of our greens, our sprouts that were grown by the group before, and we'd harvest them, put them in a bowl. We'd water them every day, go back up into the harvest room and the place where we ate lunch, and we'd put everything in a bowl and make our own dressing. And with the dressing, there was no herbs, no onion, no garlic. What you used is Rejuvelec or water. It was your own choice. And in the blender, in the Vitamix, because everybody had Vitamixes, then you would find different vegetables for the flavors you'd think you'd like to make your dressing. So the dressing was just vegetables and Rejuvelec, and we could make it taste pretty good and pour it over our salad. It was just an amazing experience. And, later on, after I got home, I was blessed so much when I went out to Creative Health, which was back then Hippocrates, but then the name had to be changed because of legalities. After 3-4 years, Don asked me if I would be the director. And so I was the director of Creative Health Institute for 86 and 87. And it was to live at a living food center for that long on 300 acres on a river and watch 40 people every 2 weeks come through the doors. It's pretty amazing. So just such a blessing.
Creative Health Institute, where was that?
That was in Coldwater, Michigan. It was actually you ready? Podunk, Michigan, just outside of Coldwater, between Coldwater and Battle Creek. And we were on 300 acres on a river, and that Don owned a saloon in that town. And he came home and shut it down and built the Raw Food Center. And it was a great, great memories. Met so many wonderful people, so many. One of my daughters actually was there a lot and worked there. My grandson was in her backpack or in a playpen, and he ate raw foods. He's 33 now and a very healthy young man. And that particular daughter of mine is a massage therapist, a colon therapist, and also she teaches raw food all over people's homes and on ships. So that's her lifestyle. My other daughter is a vegetarian, and she does live blood cell analysis, and she's a nutritionist. So all my grandchildren and all my great-grandchildren are healthy.
So when you came back originally from Hippocrates, sorry, I forgot the name. How did you change your diet? Did you go fully raw from then?
Absolutely. I never looked back. Absolutely. Actually, when I came back, I started setting everything up. Okay. So I was eating salads till I started, and they let you buy stuff and bring stuff home, which we always did when we left the center. And so I also had one of the young women who became a very close friend of mine while we were there, Kathleen, her name was, I forgot her last name, darn it, I can't believe it. But anyway, Kathleen Siva, we became very close friends. She came to stay with me for 30 days, and we did a 30-day raw juice fast. And while we were doing that, I was growing and getting everything ready and to be able to live my life that way. And also, fortunately, I love being in the kitchen. I love making food and creating recipes. So at that time, there were only 2 raw food book recipes out. One was in some of Dr. Ann's books, and the other one was Marcia. I can't remember her last name. She was a girlfriend of Viktoras at the time, and the food tasted terrible. So I make delicious, 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 quick and easy food. And my book, Living Simply Raw, my book, Living Simply Raw, shows how easy it can be. And my passion, and still is to show people, if you want to do this at any level, it's not difficult. It's actually easier than cooking food. It's quick, it's easy, it's simple to clean up. And I do all that in my book because it shows people how to set up your kitchen, 10 steps to this, 10 steps to this. And all my clients, they incorporate at some level into their life. So getting back to Hippocrates or being out in cold water, it was another amazing, blessed experience for me. So, when I came home, you know what? I was so motivated, Ronnie, by how I felt emotionally and physically and spiritually. I never looked back. I didn't want to stop feeling that way. So, and I wanted everybody to know I just had to be patient and be an example. And I think I've done that.
I would like to ask a bit about Anne Wigmore, and how did she teach? Were there classes at Hippocrates? Did she do lectures or workshops? Or you're saying that everyone was kind of making the food themselves, but how did they know what to make and so on?
Oh, that's great questions. She did classes all the time. And while she was doing, it's how we learned how to make. We were taught how to grow everything. We mixed our own soil. We planted and watered and babied our food every day. If we're in a class with Dr. Ann, most of us were, because when you do sunflower greens, there's the shell on top. We'd have bowls of sunflower greens, taking the shells off while we're listening to her class, or peeling almonds for recipes. And then Dr. Ann did a lot of food workshops, a lot. And I have a lot of those videos. And so it was a learn by doing.
You got videos of Anne Wigmore?
Oh, I have some nobody's ever seen. They're amazing.
Well, that's
amazing.
This is part of the reason that maybe people don't know much about it. I don't think there's a lot online.
Well, there are on my website. And then we also went back to, actually, there's several of us trying to put together a documentary on Dr. Ann. So we're working on that. And we've all sat down and looked at my videos, and some of them are on my website, and we're putting more on the website. So I have a lot of good information on my website, which is ageless-energy.com. There's some good information. I'm going to keep putting more up, and we're actually putting some of the old videos of Dr. Ann up. You know, many years ago, when I became the director of Creative Health Institute, there really wasn't hardly anybody was coming. So I called Dr. Ann. I said, look, I'd like to have you come out so we can market this place. So she came for 3 weeks, and we traveled through Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, and we did cable TV shows, and we got the word out, and did articles in magazines and such. So that was an exciting thing to do. And then we started potlucks. People started doing potlucks everywhere. They're still going. There's a lot of raw fooders in this area because of Creative Health Institute, because of the people, so many people that live the lifestyle. But you asked me a question. I'm sorry I got off track a little.
No, that was great. I guess we were talking
Dr.
about,
Ann.
yeah, we were talking about how she taught and how she.
Oh my God, she was so funny, Ronnie. She was great. She was loving. She was quiet, tiny, and she was funny. A lot of people didn't know that about her, but she taught all the classes. No one else taught the classes. So that's what I do when I have a retreat here. I have a great staff and I teach the classes. And
Yeah.
back to Dr. Ann, go ahead.
I'd like to understand a little bit more about the history of all these different centers, these different places that were there. So there was Hippocrates that was started by Anne, and I think Viktoras was involved.
Oh yes, absolutely. He started it with her.
And prior to that, there wasn't really anything around, or were there other places, or was there any kind of?
Well, let me go through the process with you. And Boston was the only one at the time, and other ones started popping up, small ones here and there. Well, after Creative Health Institute, then the one in Encinitas, California, at one time was Hippocrates. That is called, I forgot what it's called now, but they have at least 100 people every 2 weeks. They never mentioned Dr. Ann, but that's okay. People are going.
Is that Optimum?
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Yeah.
And
OHI.
and I understand. Pardon me?
OHI.
That's it.
Optimum
That's it. And I understand they do a great job. And then there was one, and I don't know if it's still there, but there was one in San Antonio. I know what Dr. Ann did. Oh, I am so sorry. I've got to set this up a certain way because of my injury. So the I don't know about spin-offs, but Dr. Ann, when the change took place, and Dr. Ann moved from Hippocrates on Exeter Boulevard to around the corner to another 7-story brown house. She started over with the Wigmore Foundation, and Hippocrates Health Institute sold the building, and they bought the property in Florida, which is the most, I would say, first class, expensive and beautiful, amazing raw food center in the world. And Viktoras teaches there now too, and hopefully I'm going to. But that happened, and then Dr. Ann opened up Puerto Rico. So she would go back and forth from Boston to Puerto Rico every 2 weeks. And my daughter worked there too. But Puerto Rico is it's right near the ocean, and it's still open. So that's a wonderful raw and living food center. And then the one in Boston, of course, was the fire. So the building burnt down. And no, Dr. Ann did not die in the fire. She died of smoke inhalation. And when they found her, she was in the bathroom with a bucket. And we know Dr. Ann, she would have been there. She would have been in the bathroom with a bucket trying to put the fire out. So that's what happened. I remembered the day that I found out about it. So it was quite a loss, but there are many, many people walking in her footsteps, and she did it. She did what she wanted to
Yeah,
do. She
absolutely.
wanted the world to know about raw and living foods. And honestly, Ronnie, when you get to that consciousness and all the things that you could do good, and I don't know if it's too late. None of us know, but I believe all of us that have any kind of high consciousness are trying to change the world. But I believe her dreams came true because it's worldwide. When Dr. Ann went to travel to other countries, she was greeted by heads of state.
Wow.
They brought her to the hospitals. They actually used wheatgrass juice. And there's only one molecule difference between blood and wheatgrass juice and wheatgrass. That's all there is. And so they've actually used it for blood transfusions. Not here, but she was definitely respected and more respected in other countries because Boston was always after her, especially after she wrote the book, How to Heal AIDS Naturally. So they went in and told her she had to burn all of her books. And instead of burning her books, she called each of her dear friends like me, said, I'm sending you cases of books, give them out. So, yeah, she was a strong person.
What was the cause of the fire? Was there any?
I know what many people have asked me, and in my thought pattern, I don't think there was any unfair or foul play, shall I say. They said it was the wiring, and it was an old building.
Right, I see. Of course. Yeah.
So I don't think there was foul play. I really don't.
Hippocrates was taken over, or is, well, I believe is run now by Dr. Brian Clement.
That's
Uh,
right.
Was that, how did that transition happen? Did he already own it at that point, or was he given it by Anne or something, or was it
Well,
something?
let's see if I can clarify this as nicely as possible and properly. They had different belief systems. Dr. Ann and Brian wanted different things for Hippocrates, and Brian was the head of the board of directors. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, cool, cool. Now there was the institute in Michigan, which coincidentally was very near where you lived.
Isn't that wonderful? It was hard for so many of us for that to go.
Right.
It was heartbreaking because many, many, many raw fooders from around the world came. And those of us that live in Michigan, we're a great family, and we do carry things on, all of us. But the reason it didn't continue is because one of the guys that took over, Lanny, he bought it. Finally, Don found the right person to buy it before he died. And then Don died in a fire. So across the street. And he died from smoke inhalation. But Lanny came one weekend and I was teaching there, and he was there for a 2-week program and got rid of his prostate cancer. And so his family had a lot of money and they were well known in cold water. So he bought it, redid it. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and started really rocking with it. And I used to do raw food festivals out here in Michigan,
Brilliant.
nice big ones, and teachers and outside, and I used to have a retreat center, 80 acres, but I'm trying to simplify my life at my age. So Lanny had his own plane, and it was shortly after the last raw food festival I did, and he was running this place, incredible. Whatever it took, he did it. I mean, when I went there, we had wood burning furnaces. There wasn't gas. There was no wood. That's
Right.
one of the reasons I called Dr. Ann, says we got to get this thing going. And so anyway, he redid everything. It was first class. The pictures before and after on the inside and outside are incredible. But after my raw food festival, he hightailed, I guess he flew down to Florida. He was good. It was, I don't know, 4-seater plane, 6-seater, I don't know. He was getting a new plane, not a new plane, a used one. And on takeoff, something was wrong with the plane, got tangled up in some wires, and he died.
Oh, no.
That was heartbreaking. And so his family had no interest at all in keeping Creative Health Institute going. They tried, and a lot of us went and tried to help Hiawatha, a lot of us, and they just couldn't make it happen, and they closed it down forever about 3 years ago. It was
Yeah,
special.
I saw on their website you can still maybe buy the business in some way, the if people want to run it or whatever. But
Oh,
you actually worked as the director of the institute for a couple of years. Is that what you were saying?
could you repeat that, please, Ronnie?
You worked as the director of the institute.
Yes, for almost 2 years. And it was wonderful. It was a great experience. If I got tired of working in the office, because when you give up your life when you do that, it's not really work, it's just a commitment. I would go into the growing room for 12 hours a day, listening to classical music and plant and harvest and plant. Was wonderful, very spiritual thing to do, very relaxing. I loved teaching. I loved it very much.
Mhm.
And we had great staff people. We were very fortunate.
And how many people did you?
It held 40 people every 2 weeks,
Mhm.
and our limit was 40. We'd have families, watching people's lives change on that level for almost 2 years. It changes you.
Mhm.
You can't not know this works.
Mhm.
Now, yes, it's easier when you're a controlled environment, but once you get this and you do it, I know so many people that are 90 to 100%. But I think it's important to not push yourself and maybe say, let's try it for a day. Let's try it for a week. Try to do it in the summer if you're in the colder weather. If you're eating cooked food, you've got to take digestive enzymes. That's another whole hour. It's very important. Why? Because the body has the ability to take your digestive enzymes from your pancreas and other organs that produce enzymes, then they have to overwork, and they can take them. And I mean, because the pancreas can't make as much of people that eat all cooked foods, the body can actually borrow from your metabolic enzyme bank. And you don't want to do that. That's part of your immune system. So it's digestive enzymes are really important. And so is detoxification. And I'm sure you know all that.
Well, certainly enzymes are important, and without them we can't digest anything. But um, what were some of the lessons you learned as a director of that institute?
I think I'm learning more lessons now than I did then. It was a long time ago. I was there from 1980, and then I was all the time there. We would go and teach classes. I was the director in the mid 80s, but I think patience more than anything, and I always loved people. Um, so I don't want to say it was discipline, because after a while you don't need the discipline, it just
Sure,
happens.
sure.
I don't know if I honestly can say what life lessons I learned there. Because I'm learning more life lessons now that I'm 80 than I have before.
Yeah. So, were you already doing work like that prior to that? You were already were you already like a manager or a director before that?
Before I went to Creative Health,
Yeah.
no, I would go and teach.
You
On
were.
my spare time, I would go and teach. I would come if Don's another story, if Don would leave or there weren't a teacher, but I was there for 2 years solid.
Mhm.
And then just being, I guess what I learned more than anything is peace. That's kind of what I learned more than anything, is being able to be in the moment. And we would have amazing peace circles or prayers before dinners lunches and breakfast. And it was always quiet there. So I think that was it. Thank you for asking me. It's just being peaceful.
What kind of people came to the center?
Oh my gosh, Ronnie, people came from everywhere, all over the world. Oh my goodness. People who just wanted to be healthy, get healthier, people that were dying, people that had every disease you can think of. And it was beautiful watching how everybody melded together. There's not a lot of talking at a raw food dinner or lunch because you're chewing a lot, but then everybody's always together. We did amazing things. We had music, we had poetry. When I was there, I taught the majority of the classes. Someone else I had teaching the planting classes, but I've even got to find, I'd love to find some of those old videos too. But, and when Dr. Ann came, it was even more fun because she would come and stay for a couple of weeks, 2-3 times a year. She actually came to my house when I did retreats here. And I got some great video of that too. That was like in 1990. So yeah, the group was incredible with her. And Dr. Ann never ate at the table with us. She ate by herself, and she didn't talk when she was eating. And when we traveled together, we stayed in, rooms right next to each other, and she would bring all the food, and she traveled with all of her greens, and she'd get ice and have ice brought in, a lot of it, in a cooler. And so if we were to have lunch or dinner, we usually were working during the day doing interviews, but we were eating at night, and she would have me come into her room. She'd have energy soup all set out. We'd have dinner together, and she loved watching old movies. So we'd lay in the bed and watch old movies.
Fantastic. And from what you're saying, do you run a center now, or you were talking about having a place and having staff? Is that something you're doing now?
Okay, I had 80 acres, and my dream was to be able to have my own retreat center. But I used to take people a 3-hour drive up north to do 3- and 4-day raw food retreats and raw food juice fasting, because I'm a naturopath, nutritionist, colon hydrotherapist. So we would take people up for detox weekends or 3-4 days. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to buy something around in the area where I wouldn't have to drive 3 hours. And it was all God, Ronnie, because I had a client who was a real estate lady. I told her what I was looking for, and she said, I'll let you know when you get back from Florida. I said, no, I want to know. I would like you to look now. And I was a runner at the time. So she called me the next day. She said, tell you what, Joyce, because I had a dream board and I wanted 80 acres with a lake. That's all I asked for, 80 acres with a lake and woods. And she called me up. She said, 1.5 miles from you, there's 80 acres with a lake, a river, pond, woods, hardwoods, pine trees, and buildings. And I was getting ready to go out and run, and I went right over there, and I just started crying. It was amazing. It used to be a Christian summer camp. It was perfect. It took years to turn it into what I wanted to. It was abandoned or not used for 4 years, but I did it with the help of a lot of loving people. Worked very hard to do it. And that's where I used to have the festivals and raw food retreats, and we could sleep 20 people. But I sold everything a couple of years ago. But I can still do them here, and I can sleep 8 people. And I have a greenhouse and a growing room, and the lower level of my home is my whole health center, my clinic. So we use the whole house, and
Right.
I have a great staff, and I'm on 6 acres in the woods. It's totally private.
And where is that you are?
Brighton, Michigan.
Is that where you've always been, Brighton, Michigan?
Yes, sir. I moved here, well, many years. I bought the property. Let me think. When I got back, I bought the property when I left Creative Health Institute in 87. And that's another story. And then always as a kid, I wanted to, I don't know, as a young girl, I wanted to live in the woods.
Ah,
and I don't know why, but in a street with the trees that all went over. And so I started looking a year and a half later. I found my acreage here in Brighton, and it's got 80-foot high trees now. I'm surrounded by them, and the road to come to it was in my dreams. So I designed my house and built it, and I didn't want to have an office in town. I just wanted to work from home. So the lower level is where I see all my clients, and we do a lot, but we use the whole house when we do a retreat. I have a pool, hot tub, and I have someone bring a big tent in. We have yoga. It's beautiful. But at this time in my life, I just don't want to run a whole center.
Sure.
I'm type A anyway, and my kids want me to take a break, even though you love it.
Yeah, I've spent some time in Michigan. I've been in Adrian, Michigan. It's not that close to you, but I've
Oh, it's beautiful.
spent a little bit of time there. Um, well, excellent. I've really enjoyed hearing more about your story. I'm sure there's so much more for you to share. Is there anything you would like to share before we finish?
Well, I just want to encourage people. It's a step-by-step process. And, if it's something you want to do, you would be such a great example for your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. You'll be able to touch so many lives just by moving on to the path of living a healthier lifestyle. And I'd love you to take a look at my website. I've just created a wonderful product line I'm very proud of. And
And
it's digestive enzymes and detox and colon support. So
that's ageless energy, did you say?
ageless-energy.com.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Joyce, for joining us today. And
I've loved it, Ronnie. Thank you for having me.
I'm sure hopefully we can speak again. I'm sure there's a lot more to go into.
I
Uh,
would love to. You
so
let me know when.
absolutely. So thank you very much. I would just say to all the viewers and the listeners, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for watching and listening. Please feel free to share this with others, and check out what Joyce is doing, agelessenergy.com. And we'll see you in another episode of the Love Fruit podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.